Hi, welcome to the League-Kempner House in Galveston. It's volunteer day and it's already starting off not great. I brought my husband's truck and I accidentally locked my keys in it. He has a hide key on it, so I spent about 40 minutes going over every square inch of the undercarriage of this truck looking for it. I would have called him, but of course my phone was in the truck and I didn't have a way to do that. I finally saw somebody on the street and borrowed a phone. Of course, he didn't answer, but I did find it, so I was able to get in and get my stuff out, but I'm behind. So first volunteer is already here, so we're going to get busy. Okay, so Aaron is here sorting all of the grand staircase surround, all the wood that's left. I don't know where that went. But thank goodness we have 15-foot ceilings. He's kind of sorting by type. All this needs to be repaired and treated. And like a jigsaw puzzle, it's going to go back up in that staircase landing area if it can. We want to clear this out because McNatt is coming to do our windows and they're going to build them on site, so they need room to set up their equipment and work. So we've got to get this empty for tours, but we also want to get it cleaned out so they can start working. And he just noticed something I've shown you before, but I think it's so neat. It says something League Hall, which is the staircase area. So we're trying to get all this picked up and organized and out of the way so McNatt can come in with their equipment to build our windows. And when they're done, we can have tours. Oh, when you get to that fretwork, let's leave it out accessible. That's something I can start working on. Repairing that, that's going to take some time. And see, Aaron proves we're not a bunch of 65-year-old women working. We have young people interested in the house. Sandra and Oscar are tackling cleaning out all my junk that has to go back to the Lucas apartments. But I want to get it out of here so that we can actually start refinishing these cabinets in the butler's pantry. They're in great shape. They just need a good cleaning. But there's a lot of stuff. And here's our outdoor crew. Say hi, everybody. Hard at work. We have a new volunteer, Patty, and a returning volunteer, Kelly, who came all the way in from Bryan College Station today. And of course, Sherry, who lives here on the island and comes by at all times during the week to help with the yard. And we really need all that help because this yard is a beast. I didn't get a picture of our other new volunteer, Allison, because she was in the tool room sorting, but she did this lovely sketch of the house and sent it to me. I didn't get a lot of video because our normal videographer Joe was off in Arizona meeting her very first grandbaby, so we'll give her a pass for volunteer day, at least this time. But we had a great day and we got a lot done. We had a great crew here and we really appreciate all the effort. That one's got a glass front on it. The thing about having a big space is you accumulate stuff. This is stuff that Chris gave me that I brought back from Austin. It all needs to get locked upstairs in the servant's bedroom and out of the way. That's another project for today. It is a very random work day. Ricardo is here. He's got his new to him van with him today, so we're going to take advantage of the fact that it is not pouring down rain. We've probably gotten 8 or 9 inches of rain or so in the last week. Everything is saturated, but right now it's clear and beautiful. More rain's coming in, so we're going to be moving some of my junk back down to the Lucas Apartments. When I initially bought this house to help finance it, I gave up my apartment and leased it out long-term for the last 2.5 years. So I had a lot of random things that I stored here in the house. Well, I'm getting the apartment back, and all that stuff needs to head back over there and clear out the space so we can get ready and open for tours. This room is full of stuff. They've already taken 4 or 5 loads down, but my goal is to clean this out, get all my stuff back at the Lucas, put some shelves that I found on the 3rd floor in here, and start moving all of our tools and things up here to get the downstairs cleaned out so that we can do plumbing work. Of course, Ricardo and his guys are incredibly fast, so they made short work of the moving, and while I finished up the organizational part, they headed back down to the ground floor basement and started working on that floor in the old chauffeur's quarters where we had to redo that plumbing. We now have a bit of a problem with how to actually pour the foundation and frame up the wall between the living kitchen area and the bathroom because they are not at the same height, and we don't want any framing up against bare ground where water could seep in and rot the framing 2x4s. So we first have to clean this area out, and then Ricardo and I need to put our heads together and think of how this can be done. When our electrician Mateo was here, he and I also spent some time rethinking how we would get the electrical wiring into the area that was added on, because the walls are solid brick and concrete and there's no way to pull wires in the wall. We do have the what I call the possum superhighway, where we pulled all that possum family out, these old channels that were for sewer lines, and Mateo came up with what I think is a great idea on how to use those differently than we thought at first. So Ricardo's actually going to have to chip out some concrete and help create a new channel from one room to the other so the conduit can get in. So that was just another small task that needs to be taken care of. That conduit will have to be laid before the concrete floor can be poured. Of course, Ricardo likes a tidy workspace, and my dirt shoveling and cleanup didn't live up to his expectations. So they took a broom and did a little cleanup, and then it was time to get out the chalk line and figure out exactly what we needed to do in this space. No, I don't. It doesn't have to line up. It needs to be just wide enough that these can be in the wall.
Okay.
So if it can be straight, that's okay. But if it's offset a little bit, that's okay too. Okay, so the toilet to the wall is 16 inch. So then we want 16 here, but that has to be the edge of the finished wall.
Mm-hmm.
So if we do a 2x4 here, let's say here, so that's the, okay, and then, so that's the back side of the 2x4, and then sheetrock, and then a dishwasher is 24. I had the camera rolling throughout my discussion with Ricardo, so I know that it took about 35-40 minutes for us to work through this, and it's really important because the wall between the kitchen and the bathroom is going to be this kind of S shape, and the toilet will sit in a little nook and then coming from the kitchen side, there's a little nook for the dishwasher to slide into. And the problem is that the foundations are at two different heights. So once we pour that foundation on the kitchen side where that dishwasher slides in, it's going to create a really tall 12-inch slab there. And bathrooms have lots of rules, and one of them is that the center line of the toilet has to be 15 inches away on either side from the finished wall. So if we pour that concrete in the wrong place, and we get it wrong, we'd basically have to jackhammer it out and start over. And I know the inspectors down here in Galveston, and this is one thing they won't let you fudge on. So we really have to get it right, and we have to know the finishing types on the wall, because one way people get in trouble is they measure the 30 inches to the framing, but they don't think about the finished surface on the wall. And we have to get it right and decide things like, are we going to frame on the low part of the foundation or put the framing up on the high part of the foundation? So we just want to make sure we do it right. We don't want to have to jackhammer this out once we're done. So the slab he's been jackhammering out, they just mixed crushed brick. Probably construction debris instead of aggregate. Now that all that demolition work is done, I'm going to stop and back up and talk about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I want to do it here because you can see now clearly what's happening between the two levels of floor. You have the higher floor that was part of the addition and the lower floor that was level with the original basement floor. And that's about, right now, 12 inches difference. And what happens is, because the slabs aren't congruous, there's that gap between the upper slab and the lower slab, and you can see the exposed dirt. And we already know down here in the basement that there's a big problem with that dirt or sand absorbing water as that water table rises. So that's not going to always be dry. A lot of times water is going to wick all the way up in here. And if we were to frame a wall between these two different levels without sealing that off somehow, the wood would actually be touching up against that dirt. It would be wet all the time, and it would be a big mold and rot issue and not be good. So we have to actually come in and seal that ledge off with concrete. And we're not just going to put concrete, we're going to put down a heavy, heavy plastic liner and then the concrete. Because remember, concrete, although it looks solid and strong, it's not. It's very, very porous, and it will absorb water. And water has a natural tendency to move from areas where there's a lot of water or high humidity, let's say, to a low humidity area. It's trying to equalize itself. So you can imagine all that water under the slab, and up here in the rooms, we're going to have air conditioning that's continually pulling the humidity out of the air. It's going to create like a suction that will actually pull water up through the slab and cause that to wick. So anytime you pour a foundation, you always have to put down a vapor barrier, and that's this thick, heavy plastic. So part of the work we're doing is to seal off this dirt between the two levels. So we've got a 6-inch wall. Right here. Right here. And then, let's see, where'd that tape measure go? I said we're 16 inches off this. 16 inches is right there. So that has to be the finished wall. I'm such a visual person that once that demolition was done and we had a clean edge, I actually got some 2x6s and 2x4s and laid out the wall so I could remeasure everything and think it through. I really don't want to be having to jackhammer out or having to have Ricardo jackhammer out any of the work we do here. So once we were satisfied, everything was good, Ricardo started getting the framing together to actually pour the new concrete. We try not to spend money if we don't have to, and I had some old scrap lumber that was outside down at the Lucas apartment, so we took a break and ran to get that wood, and it turned out we had just enough to be able to frame this area up. And of course my husband had some stakes left over from some fence work he did that he told me to bring down here, and I forgot them, so we had to find some more scrap lumber to make some stakes to stabilize this framing so that it wouldn't move when that heavy concrete is poured into it. And after all the measuring and everything we did and writing down, we got it framed up and decided it was not right. So Ricardo had to undo everything and trim one side just a couple of inches to get it right. So it was in, we measured 5 times and decided we were good to go. And I got tickled at Ricardo. He had just finished a big demolition job that he got from someone seeing the work here on YouTube that he does at the League House, and they hired him for this demolition. But that house had a big flea infestation. And so when I was talking to him on the phone and told him that I had been fighting fleas down here, apparently he did not have a good experience with the fleas, and he showed up with his own flea spray. But fortunately, they were gone in this area, so we didn't have to use it. But he did not want to relive the flea fiasco. No, let's put it this up high. Up high. No, yeah, okay. Well, it can be low. Okay. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah, that'll work. It could be either way. It doesn't really matter. It'd make it easier to finish. You're right. It would make it easier to finish this side of the wall, to have it on the low side. With all the problems worked out and everything cut to the right length, Ricardo reassembled everything and got all set up. And then it was time to start bringing in the plastic. And fortunately, because I never throw anything away, I had a huge big roll of the underlayment that goes between the floor and the concrete. It was left over from when we poured a concrete floor in the bottom of one of the Lucas carriage houses, and you just never know when you're going to need something again, and if I have room to store it, I'll keep it. We also have a little hiding place up under the porte-cochere steps where we put scraps of things, and there were a lot of short pieces of rebar in there left over from some of the earlier work in the porch, so we actually cobbled together enough things to do this without having to buy anything other than the sacks of Quickcrete. I think we need a piece down here too. and pour the concrete in between it if you want. Because the cabinet's going to be over this. This won't show. You can just pour the concrete down in here. That'll just keep that moisture off the wall when we build the wall. The next little issue to deal with was that this small space we framed up does look small, but it's going to take a lot of concrete. It's very thick, and that's kind of a waste of concrete. And we have a lot of scrap and leftover things like cinder blocks and bricks. So we're going to fill some of the void with that material so that we don't have to pour quite so much concrete. So we went outside and scavenged some things to kind of bulk up this space, and it's not going to bear any weight. It's going to be under a cabinet, and it just needs to support the dishwasher going in. So it's not an important space. We want it to be level, but we're not really too concerned about it. But he is going to fill it in with debris and then put rebar, so it will definitely be strong enough to hold the dishwasher. This is a relatively small job, so Ricardo didn't bring in his electric mixer thing that he has. They just mixed by hand in the wheelbarrow. And I think when all was said and done, this space, even filling in the gaps with cinder block, ended up taking 7 bags of concrete. So it was a lot. The concrete had to be mixed to a consistency that was fluid enough to be able to go down the sides of the form, between the form and those cinder blocks. And I think it's funny, the women watching will appreciate this. It's kind of like when you make a cake and you drop the cake pan on the counter to get rid of air bubbles. If you notice, Ricardo repeatedly taps on the side to vibrate and get air to move up and get that concrete to go in to make sure there's no voids down in the side. Now that this area is formed up and they're putting the concrete in, I think it's much easier to visualize what's going on. Again, I'm a visual person, so it helps me to see it not on paper, but kind of in real life. So where Ricardo is standing, that's the lower level of the foundation where the bathroom will be. And remember, the toilet that we're putting in is a rear flush toilet. So we couldn't make the foundation high up around those drain pipes coming up because the toilet will have to cut that pipe and put in a coupling 8 inches above the ground, I think is what David told me. So if we poured the foundation high, we couldn't install the toilet. So that's why the form is on the opposite side of that drain pipe. And we put that plastic down in there because remember, under that higher slab below that is dirt. So we want to shield the framing of the wall where this toilet pipe comes up from the moisture coming through the concrete from that dirt underneath. And you can really see that S shape. So where the cinder blocks were and where he's putting in the concrete right now, that will be open to the higher or the taller foundation where the kitchen will be. So that's where the dishwasher will slide in to that little nook. And I think it makes a good design for both the kitchen, you'll see that full layout later, but also for the bathroom. I like to kind of have the toilet tucked away so it's not as obvious when the door is open to the bathroom. So when you come down this hall and you look through the bathroom door, that toilet will be hidden in this little nook area, and what you'll see is the sink and the shower. So all in all, I think it's a good design. It took me a long time
to come up with this, and it was all driven by the sink that we want to use in the kitchen area. So we'll talk about that more when we start laying out the full kitchen. But for now, I'm really pleased with how this is turning out. We've talked before that it's much easier to design when you have a blank slate and you can be very thoughtful about where everything goes, how plumbing stacks up. But when you're working with an existing structure, and especially an older structure like this, where you want to minimize changes and damage to the existing building, sometimes it's really tricky to work everything in. And you can see here that Ricardo is putting that concrete between the plastic and the form so that the plastic is being pushed up against that dirt side so that it can, in fact, act as a vapor barrier and stop water from coming in. It's not perfect because what we'd rather see is that vapor barrier going up under the existing taller slab. But again, we have to deal with what we have and seal things off as best we can. Casualty of the freeze. Once the concrete was poured and setting up, we tackled a few other projects, and I want you to note that Ricardo was wearing safety glasses, and earlier he had on ear protection when he was chipping out that concrete, and I asked him why he did it, and he did admit that his wife Mighty Bell got on him, so I was unable to get him to put on safety equipment, but apparently his wife could.
Ricardo's too quick for me. I went inside for a minute and they already loaded up all the concrete and left for the dump.
Apparently, though, we're just snake bit when it comes to disposing of concrete. I had the truck down. It was completely full of concrete. They went to the new disposal site that we found when the old one was closed, and the new one was closed for the day. They had a big 18-wheeler blocked crosswise, blocking the gate so that you couldn't get in. So once again, we were trapped with a giant truckload of concrete and nowhere to put it. So I ended up taking it to the regular transfer station for the Galveston City dump. We have to pay for it there, but I do get one free load of I don't know how many pounds every month. So I stopped by the city and got my bill, and it only ended up costing $53. So I wasn't pleased, but it's better than paying a couple of $100s to get rid of something that we normally can dispose of free. Ricardo started chipping away at the concrete that's underneath the window. We're going to build a cabinet in this area, and the concrete existing floor is sticking out a little bit too far. There was some old lead and cast iron pipes sticking out from the ground that had to be broken up. So just some more general cleanup in this area went on.
Ricardo's just too fast for me. He already took the top row of bricks out and remade this window to match the one that McNatt decided was the best. Oops. Which is this one. And I didn't even see him do it. There's one more thing on the table. It's a big oops. My husband came in actually night before last and said, "Have you seen my string with all the hose clamps on it? Did you move it when you were cleaning the garage?" And I said, "No, I didn't touch your hose clamps." And he said, "Well, did you take them to Galveston?" And I said, "Why would I take your hose clamps to Galveston? You've taken them to the house you're working on. Go look for them." And here they are. So sorry, honey. I had them.
It was on to another project, but this video is already getting long, so we'll save that for another time. Be sure and turn on subscriptions and notifications so you find out when new videos are posted. Remember, we're the League-Kempner House in Galveston, Texas, a nonprofit set up to restore and preserve this amazing piece of Galveston history, and our goal is to get it open so that everyone can have a chance to come here in person. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and on our website, leaguekempnerhouse.org. See you next time.